Okay guys, welcome back to the Saga Motorsports YouTube channel. This time we are doing another fast lap. This time you're with Flying Felix and Rapid Richie. Ryan.
Happy to be here.
We are gonna be doing Barber. You just happen to wear that hat. First, before we get started, tell me, what do you think about Barber Motorsports Park?
Short track, I need more time with it. I feel I've done fairly well with the lap and where I need to be, but there's obviously a lot of tweaking to be done. I think total right now I've been there 3 times, and so it's very technical. I mean, you know, you're on the gas a lot through that lap, which is impressive considering how you think it's very tight, but I mean, you're on gas the majority of the lap. Mm-hmm. So it's a fun lap, it's a fun track. I always love going there, so I look forward to when we can get back there.
Walk us through a lap, obviously, give us some pointers, tell us what you're looking for, and talk to us a little bit about the car as well. This car, it's a 2018 GT3 on Continentals, this time?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's on treadwear Continentals. This is a really good lap. Ryan's an amazing driver. Let's get it.
No, I like it. I mean, what I look for on this in general is, you know me, late apexing, as well as trying to keep up my minimum speed. Turn 5 is always, I think, one of the biggest challenges for me, aside from the second to last turn. I know it's controversial. Is it 15 or 16 turns? They usually, they depending on who the organizer is, they change the number of the turns. The second to last turn we'll go through it to me is also a really huge challenge because it's very vague, and I feel open to interpretation based on a lot of factors of what's the fastest way around there. So here we're on the front straight, we're going flat out. Turn 1's relatively blind. It goes downhill to the left. However, it gets on camber as you apex, and you can really carry a lot of speed through this turn. So coming down turn 1, we find our braking point. For me, it's about a little after 3, about around the 3 mark. I'm not going full brake. I'm giving it some brake to kind of start slowing it down, get that weight on the front end a little bit. We'll see, I modulate the brake a little bit here. I come off the brake, I go full throttle just before the curb. And again, as you're coming on camber, you can carry a lot of speed through this turn. I mean, I know there are some cars, we're in the GT3 here, the GT2 I think is stupid through this turn because you can carry a good amount of speed and you have a lot of power on tap to carry the speed out. It doesn't take a Formula Wing car to go flat out through this turn. I mean, I want to say, because we haven't taken the new GT3 RS out there yet, but that might be flat out through that turn. I think maybe a lift. I think with all the aero in that car, you can really push the turn 1 pretty hard. So now, you know, we're through the turn 1. We're now approaching turn 2. There's a little bit of straightaway. Again, you're carrying a lot of speed through that turn 1. You want to track out all the way to the right as far as you can. Now, there's different ways to approach this turn. Do you hug the inside the entire time? I started toying around with it. You come out just a little bit, maybe half width, maybe a full width car out from the inside of the carousel, and then there's 2 sets of curbing throughout this turn. When you start seeing the second set of curbing, that's kind of the apex of the turn. Correct. And understanding that you're going to a slight right-hander that's uphill, and you can go flat out in this corner, but it is a confidence corner because you don't want to lift as you crest that turn, as you know, we've mentioned in a previous video about, you know, how that works with the balance of the car. So
before we move to 2, what are your thoughts on using this apron? Is this apron you should be using every time, or is this something that you kind of pocket in case you grabbed a little bit too much throttle to use it? Because I know that at the end of it here on the right, there's usually a pothole.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on using that?
My thoughts are, I try to leave a little bit of 5%, maybe up to 10% margin depending on conditions. If it's slippery, if it's hot, like we you know, and you know the car's gonna slide, I try not to use it knowing that I'm probably gonna use it because as I track out, it's just gonna wanna drift out to that point. I never wanna get to the situation where I'm to that point, the maximum, you know, place you can be on that concrete before you get into the gravel or you get into the grass. So, and then you have to lift, you have to maybe even touch the brake, you're upsetting the car, you could even do a spin. So my opinion, and it'll take more time for me to get more comfortable with it, would be to use as much as you can with still leaving a margin of error. Okay. Right? So on this one, I come out to pretty much to the edge of the track. I'm probably touching the concrete here a little bit. Correct. Yes, you have to be mindful as that concrete ends, there is a dip where everyone drives over and dips the car into that piece of dirt, which then creates a pothole, and that you don't want to go over. So you want to be able to get the car a little bit to the left out of the concrete before you hit that pothole. Yep. So here I'm going to enter, I'm kind of tight, I loosen up a little bit off the apex, or off the inside, find the curbing, I accelerate to the next curbing, and again, as I said, as we discussed complex of corners, you're going from, you know, a medium right turn to a more open right-hander, and it's uphill. There's a crest, so you have to make sure the car is super stable as the car crests that hill, because you have the front end light, then you have the back end light. If there's any type of rotation that you don't want in the car, it could send the car into a spin either direction, and on the other side, the track is still turning to the right, and so it's not like you have a lot of straightaway in front of you. If you're going straight, then you're going to go off track, and obviously in the grass you're going to probably find the wall because you're not going to have any way to get back on.
So what are you using as a turning reference? Are you using this curbing on the left?
So again, talking about connected corners, right? So we are exiting turn 2. I have some, you know, steering in the wheel, and I want to be on throttle as soon as possible. And so as I find the apex, and I start building my speed up to the apex, which is about around this cone. Now you shouldn't try to use these cones as markers, because the cone may not be there. Maybe someone hits it. Maybe, you know, it just organizer doesn't put it out there.
Yep.
Don't use these cones as reference, but in this case, it does highlight where that apex of that curbing is. And so as I get more confidence and more muscle memory of what the track looks like, my goal is to try to be on throttle as soon as I can through here. This is the track out point. Now, but all these corners these two corners are connected in a way you can be full throttle out of this corner, track out to the left to the curbing, and I'll show that. Stay in the throttle and then start pointing the car towards the right side of the track as you crest the turn, right? So again, from here, my goal is to get to about the middle section of this curbing, as far left as I can. Because this is controlled, I'm not necessarily sliding, I'm not, you know, hoping I can track out. I've been full throttle, the weight is transferred. I am now gonna bring the car to the right, or to the left, as far as I can to that curbing, without going over the rumbles that you'll see on the left side. Now, I still have wheel in pointing to the right, so I'm just basically reducing the wheel just a little bit, full throttle, to where I can bring the car back to the right, which is going to be the crest of the hill. That's the apex of the corner, knowing that this track can continually move to the right as I crest this hill. So I'm not wanting to go, if you go straight at this point, you're off track.
You're off track, yeah.
So I'm holding it, so it's basically connecting turn 2 to turn 3. Keep wheel in it, keep, you know, throttle into it. But the goal is to keep the throttle planted, because this is essentially a pretty long straightaway with this turn 3. So come across the hill, I'm in it.
You're in it, yep.
And ideally you want to, you know, as you crest the hill, as you apex off the right side, this point you're not loaded very much on the left side, so there's not much to transfer back to center. You know, you want to come about mid-track. This is going to be an upcoming slow left-hander, so now you're going to have a decent braking zone. It's downhill, it's off camber, so we're going to have to get to the right all the way. Now, and at this point, we're not fighting it, right? Because again, the car is stable, the car's, you know, neutral with its weight. So we want to bring it to the right, get full track right, so we can, you know, maximize our angle of attack on the apex, and then figure out how we're going to go around this next corner, right? So this is essentially turn 5. Find a braking point for here. I'm about the marker 4, maybe 3.5, around there. Start playing around with it. Again, as it gets hotter, as the tires get hotter, that you may have to bring that braking point a little bit further. Again, downhill, off camber. This turn is challenging, right? But it's fun. From here, I wait until I can start to see the inside apex on the left side. You know, I'm not a fan of blind corners because of that, because I want to see what I'm going to come up to next. In this instance, as soon as that rear or the left side curbing comes up, I know that's where I need to be. It's it's a medium sweeping corner. It's not a carousel. It's pretty much a 180, right? But
hairpin, yep.
But it's not really sharp either. And so you can't, it's not just you stab the brakes, you rotate and you go. You have to be patient around this corner. And so what we've kind of been playing with, what I've been playing with, is you start to try to get to the apex initially, you offset it a little bit. So I'm not really worried about hitting this left side all the way to the curbing. I displace it.
The first section.
The first section. And then as you get to the second section of the turn, the second 90 almost, is when I want to start bringing in tight, and that's that late apex, so I can get on throttle and get on, because the next portion is going to be a straightaway, right? So again, coming in, displace it, you find the apex on the left side, and then here we're powering out of it. Again, I have a good amount of wheel in the turn still, but I'm trying not to overturn the steering wheel. I'm trying not to, push the tires, and I'm trying to give it as much gas as I can coming out. Fun fact, I went around with one of our instructors, TJ, and I just consistently kept cutting into throttle traction control. And what we found was I was just asking too much of the gas, and the 992 is very disruptive with its interruption to the gas. But we turned that off and found, what I was doing was very wrong. And so that little correction of the smooth throttle input has helped me a ton since. I mean, in other tracks. But turn 5, because it's off camber, downhill, it's just
greasy.
It really, it's exponentially more impactful to really watch your inputs and be smooth on this track out. So again, for me, at this point, I'm full throttle. I don't want to fight the steering. I want to make the car track out all the way to the right. I don't know if I'd necessarily suggest using all the curbing on the right side here. I don't think you really need to, because this second half of the corner does unwind a little less than the initial turn-in. So you don't necessarily, if the car's going to go there, that's fine. And if you can control it up to the point where you're on the curbing and you're not sliding, doing a four-wheel slide off of that, that's fine. But in this example, I come out to the curbing and no rumble strips at all, right? I avoid the rumble on the right side, but you want to use as much as you can, because again, you want to carry as much speed as you can. So I think
the car, well, I don't think from the steering wheel we still have in it, and how you're rolling throttle, the car's wanting to get to that curbing section. You're not putting it there. The car's simply tracking out right because you're grabbing throttle. It's blowing the front end off a little bit. The car's going wide, but that's where it wants to go naturally. I was going to say the same thing. Cresting, was that 3? Cresting from 2 to 3. Yep. The car's going to go a little bit wide, but that's just where it wants to go, right? You don't want to fight it. Just let the car do its thing and work on those pedals.
So here we have I guess this is this is a straightaway. There's a little kink here, but it's not, it inconsequential. And so there is another tight complex coming up on the right-hand side, so we got to get track left. So my thought here is, okay, I can breathe. I survived the first, 5 turns of the track. So now we have to get up for the next section, which is going to be interesting. So here, track left. Here's a little kink. Approaching the bridge. Now here is interesting because it's kind of a slow corner to the right, but you can carry speed into it, but it's going to be downhill over bumps, and there's some debate of how much curbing do you take through this section. We'll go through that. For me, I'm braking around the 4, maybe 3.5 to start slowing the car down to feel like, okay, I don't want to overslow, because again, you can carry speed into this turn-in, but I also don't want to go flying off the curbing and into the wall, right? Yeah. So here, turn in, I usually wait for the right side curbing to show up for when I look to start turning in. You don't want to use these cones, but there's a cone there, so it's there. You can, use it as an extra, I guess, check, right, in this process. But the feeling is that you're going to come into this corner, and at this point, I would feel like I overslowed a little bit because I am grabbing a little bit of gas before the apex of this section. But the idea is you're gonna, get to the right side curbing, and then the debate is right here. So you can't see it. You don't know where you're going. You see gravel, you see grass. No idea where the road's going. Is it going left, right? Obviously it's gonna go to the right. But on the left side is a lot of curbing. And as we go through here, we can see right here, a lot of people, it's black, so a lot of people they put their tires all the way almost to the grass. And so I believe later, either in this weekend, or if this is not the third weekend I went there, that last weekend I did play with going more to the left, and you really do straight shots. This is 3 turns right immediately, and we're doing 75 mile an hour right here. you're basically falling downhill, going over curbing, and then the final right-hander is kind of tight. It does grip up, and so you start going uphill, you're on camber, but you're essentially trying to maximize your speed coming through here, decelerating a little bit, falling down these curbs, and then to be able to make the right-hander, right? So for me, I'm still, I'm using gas and brake to figure out how fast I want to go through this section. I try to use as much brake on the curbing on the left side that I can to, again, but I've played with more curbing, and so you can play this yourself. Cars are different. Some cars, like this yellow car, actually likes curbing a lot, whereas the 992 does not like curbing as much, and so you have to play with that. If the curbing makes your car very upset, then maybe you need to not use as much curbing, and then that will give you a faster lap. And here we're entering the third turn of this series. Again, it's a braking zone. You're downhill. It's going to grip up. You're going to get on camber, but it's a tight corner. And so the idea is to use the curbing. Again, you can see all the tire marks on the curbing of where, and cone's knocked down. That's probably not the apex that you want to aim to. Yeah. So throw away that cone as a reference. But you want to use the curbing as much as you can. And these tire marks do kind of tell you. Are you in a good place, or are you off? Because the marks are general consensus of everyone uses this section and uses this direction of what you should be in, right? So I feel this kind of helps tell me in a split second, okay, I'm in a good position. The question is am I at the right speed, right? So we're trail braking into this corner. I'm maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less, to try to get the car down to a speed where I feel like I can make this right-hander. And again, you're going to want to get on power, and because it kind of unwinds, you do want to start tracking to the left, but not fighting the car. You don't want to just, have the car, the steering input all the way to the right and let the car drift out. You're pushing, it's scrubbing speed. So you want to unwind the car, go on throttle as soon as you can, because again, this is going to be another short straightaway. Track all the way to the right, or to the left. You want to bring it back to the right. And so what I'm looking at here is we have a left-hander. Now this is a series of turns where it's an S.
Some little S's, yeah.
So you have one set of S's that you tack a certain way, and then you have a second set of S's that's different. And so I would feel for novices that maybe would get confused about, well, where am I on the track? Is it the first, second set? Because you have to attack them differently, right? And this is where you have to have awareness of where you are on the track at all times, because if you feel like, and I've seen students do this, if you attack a corner the wrong way, you're going to go off track, or something bad's going to happen, because you're like, I had no idea that second right was there, because they didn't realize where they were on the track, right? Yep. So, but for me, track right, I want to start getting to as close to the curve as I can. Again, the cone is there. It's not a good reference point to use, but in this instance, the idea is you start turning before the curbing ends. And this is a case where you don't necessarily have to have a quick turn. You can actually do a slow turn sooner to reduce the arc, but you still have the same curvature going through the turn, right? Yeah. And so, again, for me, about halfway through this curbing is when I start to do the turn in, and I look for the left side, because now I can barely see the curbing on the left side. That's where I want to go to. And here is where I kind of want to, we call it neutral apex. What do you call it? Not late apex, but
I think this is kind of late, right? Because
this is late. Okay.
Yeah, I think this is mid late.
I tried not to, but
no. I think it's mid late, and okay. That's definitely okay, because you want to better position yourself for the next right-hander, right? If you're too early on this one, you're going to pinch the next one. Now, what I was going to tell you is on this car, I believe I just saw you did a breathe, and that got you enough front end on the car. So yeah. Yep. So you just.
Yeah, so I'm full throttle here. Coming to turning, you just breathe.
Yep, and that gets you the front end in the car, and you just do maintenance throttle. Now, obviously, the safe way, you move the car right. You can brake to just slow the car down if you're new to this track.
If you need to.
Then you turn that car, and then it's just maintenance throttle throughout.
Yep, and in here, it's one of those, and 911 specifically, if you use the maintenance throttle through these corners, it's way more stable than if you're either off the gas fully or if you're trying to get full on gas, right? It's about the balance.
Yep.
So yeah, so here, feet throttle. I want to use that curb. That's a tall curb, so I don't want to necessarily use a lot of that curbing.
The car a little bit.
But this track out, I would say, if everything is stable, you're comfortable, use all the curbing that you can without the rumble strips. And again, we go to the second part of the S's. So a good little bit of brake. See, and this is a great example of brushing of the brake, right? You don't need to grab a lot of brake. Full throttle, a little bit here. I mean, I know the graph, I mean, probably about 30–40% brake, but just for a little bit, and then I'm just grazing on the brake because I want to go into this S's coming downhill at a pretty high speed, give a throttle. Now here's where I'm trying to, and this is, I do this too, is either I'm overslowed or I feel like I try to test the limits of traction. I'll maybe give it a little bit of throttle to transition the car to rotate it the other way. And in this instance, I felt like I could get away with that, of using a little bit of gas, going to brake. In the future, if I have more practice, I may not do that. In this case, I did. But my intention here is really to have a good apex, somewhat late, and then line up for the right-hander. And now there's elevation here. So now we're gonna come downhill, then it's gonna grip up and go uphill on camber to the right. So you can get a lot more grip through here than you did the previous set of S's. So in this case, what I'm gonna try to do is position the car to the middle and start bringing it to the right. But this curbing on the right side, this extra set of curbing, you can get on and use. Now in this case I didn't, I stayed on the pavement. But you can use this curbing on the right side if your car is set up to absorb those bumps, and you can definitely get on throttle more and exit out of here.
But before you move on, 7 and 8 is basically the corkscrew turns, the one after the bridge, or the ones you just spoke about. So 7 and 8, just like the two corners that we just passed, this left-right section, a lot of professional drivers and instructors say that you have to enter there with a single brake pedal input. So you go to like a 8 pedal, you come out to a 1 pedal, and you're supposed to carry that 1 pedal. If you grab throttle in between, you're supposedly doing it incorrect. Now TJ and I and you, we kind of went back to back with that, and we figured grabbing a dab of throttle in between them was okay, and it actually created lap time. Obviously, if you're going into the first right-hander at 7, so 7 is going to be this one. Let me go back real quick if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So 7, this one, what they're saying here is you give it an 8 brake, and then you let the car go, and you continue with a 1 brake just to keep the nose, and you're supposed to keep that nose all the way to here.
Yep.
We found it, that's not the case. I think, I don't know what corners these are gonna be. I think it's 12 and 13. I think it's gonna be the same case here. Just like you said, when you're midway through that corner, grab throttle, grab a little brake, and just feel the car, because that's exactly what you're doing. That's why you grab this brake, you grab a little bit of throttle, and you're just kind of seeing how the car is feeling through there, right?
I am, and in my mind, if I had to think back to it, this is kind of a straightaway. Like I'm powering out of a corner. I know it's a connected series of corners, but because this is on camber, and you can really push the limits of traction on this corner more than I feel others. You can grab a little bit of throttle out of that apex and accelerate to the next apex a little bit. Again, if I do it again, hopefully we're gonna go back this year, I'll play with it, and maybe I'll find that I have too low of minimum speed, and I have to up my minimum speed on the first section, to whereas I can't even grab any gas because I'm basically at the limit of traction, and I'm gonna have to use whatever I can to get the weight transferred to the other side, load the left side to go to the right. Yep. So, again, going to the right side, full throttle out, you're coming up to the hill, and this is, you crest the hill. It's somewhat of a straightaway, so luckily there's not a lot of drama. Coming to this corner is a confidence corner. And I say that because you're going downhill, but then it comes uphill and you're on camber, you have a lot of grip. And so I've driven some cars through here that we have full throttle through this section, and this one on street tires, I could not. But the idea is you want to carry as much speed through here as you can, and you use as much of that curbing as you can and power out of it.
Yep, literally as much, because you do not want the car going to the left-hand side of the track here.
No. Now, in this instance, this is where it's open for interpretation of what the best line is. I have no idea. This is so vague. This is the vaguest part of the track, and of any track I think I've ever driven on, where you don't want to be full left, you don't want to be full right, you want to be somewhere in the middle. And in this section, you have a reducing radius corner where you're having to decelerate without overslowing. And it kind of level. I mean, you do have some camber here to help you with the grip, but in the moment it feels kind of flat. And so as you can see here, I'm kind of mid-track, a little bit to the right. And here's where you start, okay, where do I start braking? And I have wheel in this, right? So this is like a turn 15 scenario where you're using brake and wheel. You're constantly slowing the car down to make this final corner. And if you look at the track map, it's kind of a reduced radius corner. You don't want to blow the right side or early apex the right side, because it's going to throw you out to the left side on the next section. Because this is a connected set of corners and you want to actually have a left turn after this, you have to be really, I guess, concerned about where the car is going to be on the track, right? What's your position? Because you want it, if ideally in an ideal line, this is all going to flow and be able to, have a highest minimum speed through the section as you can, while setting up for the fast left-hander after this, right?
And the reason you weren't giving it a big throttle or a big brake input is literally because of what you said. The car's wanting to go left, you're wanting to go right. So if you give it a big throttle or a big brake input, the car is literally like, the momentum of the car is straight towards the outside of the track. So you want to be ginger on those inputs, and that's why you see that you're being super calculated on the brake.
On the brake, we'll see here a little bit of gas of when I can apply it. Very soft on trying to get back on gas. My goal through this section is to basically bring it in tighter and tighter, late apex the right side so I can stay as far right as I can, because this is a fast left-hander coming up. A lot of grip. Again, I don't think on this car I can go full throttle, but on other cars you can go full throttle all the way to the apex and lead on to the front straight, which is, again, that's the goal, is how soon can you get on the throttle, right? So from here, it's slowing. Now I'm giving it gas after somewhat of a late apex into this right-hand side, the right-hander. Building throttle, I let it breathe, I don't hit the brakes, late apex on the left side. For me, I'm not necessarily trying to look at the cone. Obviously, you can see I'm turning at the cone.
At the cone, yeah.
But it's really before the curbing. You can kind of see the tire marks on the track to kind of show the general direction all the cars go into, to know when you kind of start turning in. But my goal is not, because look, I'm turning in before I even see the curbing on the left-hand side. This is one of those timing, guessing moments of, because if the cone's not there, you do have the right side curbing to kind of gauge where you're at, but you don't have any reference on the left side yet of where you want to be and where you want to go. And as I played with, and I got some, pointers, is you also kind of want to late apex this last turn as well. You don't want to be in the middle of the curbing. You want to be towards the end of the curbing, because that will allow you to be on throttle a lot sooner and a lot more through this straightaway. So going through here, I look at that. So my target is to basically touch the curbing towards the last third, and basically as the curbing ends, not touch the grass, but try to hold it as much as I can all on the left side. Now that I can see I'm on camber, a lot of grip, I'm building throttle through this entire section. Never hit the brakes, right, coming into this left-hander. And now I'm tracking out as much to the right as I need to without going over. Here, I feel like you don't need to use all the rumble strip, everything, every inch of concrete up to the grass. You leave yourself a little bit of wiggle room, but use up all the track. Don't fight the car. Don't lift the gas. Stay on throttle. And then from here, it's a race to turn one.
I like that. So I'm gonna go back to what you said about, in some of these places you don't have a marker to turn in, but you definitely have sensory inputs from the car, right?
Yep.
Maybe you hear that the car, because you're shifting the car as well, right? So maybe you hear the car, it's at the top of second gear, at the top of third gear, and you know that ratio to the transmission is kind of at this mile an hour. So maybe you're not using physical objects on the track, but you're definitely using what the car's telling you, right?
I do have an internal timing. I mean, I use the note of the engine, what gear I'm in, and I'll typically try to tell myself this is a second gear turn, this is a third gear turn. So I know I need to come down to that level, and I know sound, I need to come down to a certain RPM based on sound, and know I can now start giving it throttle, and where do I need to be at track out at a certain sound. And so that's how I also can gauge my speed and where I need to be on track without looking down physically at a speedometer, and then calculating, okay, this now says 80 miles an hour. Am I above or below where I need to be? I'm not doing any of that stuff. It's all about the feel of the sound, feeling the car? Do I have as much grip as I feel I should have, or am I now have less grip now because it's at the end of the session, it's really hot, maybe it's toward the end of the day. So that's really about how to drive the car with feeling versus trying to just look and calculate based on kind of external inputs.
Yeah, and Barber, we love this place, but this track, I mean, Indy goes there and there's always wrecks. Like it's an aero track. It's kind of like GT Motorsports Park, right? Where it's track, grass, Armco.
Yeah,
so
you have a little bit of curbing in some places, but that's it. That's all you get. I always try to build in that margin of error on tracks like this to make sure that if there is a wobble, if there is maybe, there's a car stopped in front of me and you have to lift off the gas, and you have a little bit of road left to use before you have to start thinking about, okay, now I'm spinning, how do I need to point the car in the right direction, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's a lap around Barber. What do you think? What can I do better? What do you do differently? Do you use more of the curbing in some places? Do you attack corners a little differently? Understanding different cars will have different lines through things. And how do you like that last section of that last right? Was that turn 15, I believe? That right-hander. How do you attack that? Do you go more left side of the track? Do you try to keep it tight in the right side? I'd love to know.
I can only agree with him. All right, guys, that's it for us. See you guys next time.
Subscribe.